All right, I want to turn now to the question of the Prime Minister and criticisms that have been levelled at him by the media in recent days, particularly over the last 6 weeks. Now, I want to make a point. I'm not here to be Scott Morrison's cheer squad. I'm not here to advance the policy positions of a particular party, and I never think of those things when I am producing these programs. I anchor as much as, I know I'm a human and all the rest of it, but as much as is humanly possible, I anchor what I say in something more fundamental, which is the truth as far as I can discern it. So my comment here is not necessarily a partisan comment, but it's a comment about the criticism and the mechanism of the criticism that the media is making of the Prime Minister. Let me explain. He is, the Prime Minister, finding himself in a key respect in a similar position to what Tony Abbott found himself to be in. Big sections of the media would rather that he wasn't there. Big sections of the media don't support him. They would like to see him gone and undermined. And it is getting quite ugly. We saw in the last 6 weeks that there was nothing he could do that was good enough. Every step, every word, every act was ridiculed. It was contemptible. It was broadcast in the least critical light. And the anti-ScoMo narrative built steam quite relentlessly. And serious damage was done to his brand, if you like. And it was done in such in a nonsensical way. He couldn't get it right. If you visited the fire-ravaged communities, then he was a shameless self-promoter. And that was said of him, that it was all, I think Kevin Rudd said, it was all about Scott Morrison in all of this. And then though he stays away and he's not seen in the communities, and the great cry is, well, where's Scott Morrison? And hashtag Scotty from marketing was trending on Twitter saying, this man is just a builder of brands and a do-nothing person. So what's he supposed to do? Neither of them's good enough. Or, for example, when he was accused of doing nothing, and they're saying the government needs to do more, needs to do more, needs to do more, primarily those who are saying he needs to do more on climate change, but say he needs to do more. And so he puts out a video on social media, which is a straightforward explanation of all the policy positions that the government has come out with and the packages that they've released in trying to ameliorate this problem. And he gets derided actually globally. I mean, Piers Morgan even got in on the action as totally and thoroughly insensitive for advertising during a crisis. Now, it said authorised S. Morrison on the end of the video, but that's a legislative requirement that be there. It's not a political ad. And so he can't get either of those positions right either. You take the holiday to Hawaii. He goes on the holidays. The fires got a lot worse. The pressure came on and he came home. Now that was, he said he apologises for that and that's his business, but he's done the worst thing imaginable apparently. Now here's the thing, firstly, before I even go further on this, could it be that actually a Prime Minister who is modelling being a father and a husband and a lover of his family is what this nation needs as much as anything else? I think that's true. Do you know, I work in an environment where there's lots and lots of busy people, where people are 24/7, round the clock, they're managed in their diaries and everything. And I meet a lot of men who thoroughly neglect their families, and work always comes first. Always comes first. It's easy to say I don't have this problem, but I see it time and again, and it's kind of sad. And the damage that is causing to families around this country, and the social problems that flow from that, from a fatherlessness problem, not because they're actually not around, not because they're actually not in the marriage, but because they might as well not be. And here's a Prime Minister who says to his daughters, I'll take you to Hawaii at the end of the year, come what may, and he tries his best to keep the promise. That's something I say, park the criticism on that. And yes, the fires then got a lot worse when he left and he came back, but the criticism was completely disproportionate because he was attacked and attacked and attacked from the moment they smelt like he might be on holiday. But then the Queensland Premier was on a cruise and nothing was really said about her. And then the New South Wales Emergency Services Minister, who's like at the front and centre of this thing, or supposed to be, jets off to Europe whilst Scott Morrison's being criticised for being in Hawaii, and he's away for a fortnight. Well into the new year when the fires are raging, and there's not a peep about him. Because see, again, it's not the principle that the media is attacking. It's not the principle that people are going after. It's the person. They don't like him. If Australia were wiped off the face of the earth for 100 years, not one jot of difference would be made to climate change. But apparently he's got some kind of blood on his hands because his climate change policies over the last 12 months haven't been good enough. And somehow that's responsible for the fires. Tim Minchin, the comedian, tweets about PM's inaction on climate change as a global embarrassment in light of this. Well, like he could have done anything about it. And somehow this is, his fault. He can snap his fingers and he can, make it as if the fires never happened. And there must be some policy setting that solves all of this. And so people who abuse him are championed in the media. I mean, the Project was even so ready to get that lady on who apparently was saying he's not my Prime Minister, only to find out afterwards that she wasn't really saying that at all. She was making a statement of fact because she was a British citizen, not because she was trying to criticise him. And so they jumped the gun, but they wanted to get those critical voices and amplify them ASAP. And none of this stuff is levelled at him because he's done wrong. None of this stuff is levelled at him for those substantive reasons. It's because his politics are the wrong colour and because his creed is Christian, and a lot of people would prefer that neither of those things were in power. Tony Abbott had the same problem until they finally finished him off. He wound up, if you recall, stumbling over nearly every word that came out of his mouth, speaking so awkwardly because of his efforts to guard against misrepresentation and abuse. And it just didn't matter what he said. Something was lighted on every day in the media and sent up as if he was a moron. And unfortunately in Australia, this condition still prevails whereby politicians are heavily affected by these kinds of tactics. They do try and explain themselves. They do modify their language. They do change tack, and they become nervous and risk averse and try not to talk about the things the media doesn't want them to talk about, and try and fold up into this little box that's built for them by the intelligentsia and the media and the politics and all the rest of it. The Canberra bubble forces them into this box where they stay there and they're obedient and they don't do the wrong thing or step out of line. And I noticed there was one point in that crisis where Scott Morrison even was stumbling over his words as if he was filtering and second-guessing and adapting. And there was a period there where it seemed that he was knocked off his equilibrium, which is odd for him. And politicians continue to be so affected here. But here's the thing. A great help to me in so much of this has been the counsel from Jesus, which has been that there's such a thing as pearls before swine. And it doesn't matter what you say, it doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter how you try and accommodate. These are people who will actually take whatever it is and they will tear you to shreds with it. That's the metaphor that Jesus uses in Matthew 7. And one of the mechanisms in which Donald Trump has been quite clever is that he's actually disarmed the media by calling them out for this. And he's actually refused to play along with the game. He's refused to, dance when they've started shooting off the firearm, if you like. He's refused to speak and act and conform in the way that they wanted him to. He's refused even actually to talk with them in many cases, to preferring just to communicate directly. And he has just said to the American people what many Australians actually know as well, which is that large sections of the media, and please note I'm saying large sections of the media, not everybody, are just plain corrupt. And when I say corrupt, I mean that in a very specific way. I mean they just don't care for the truth. They use their combined influence not to expose truth, but they use their combined influence on the narrative as a political power tool, regardless of what they say or do in the process. Their interviews and their techniques aren't designed to unearth reality. Their interviews and their techniques are designed to create a certain political narrative and therefore to exert power. It's another way in which, as Isaiah 59:14 says, a verse I love to talk about often, it says, truth has stumbled in the public squares. And that is true. And I like to think that if I were in the Prime Minister's seat, and I'm not, and I trust I never will be, but I'd like to think of this, for what it is. Name it for what it is. Break up the game. Send the swine back to their sty. But in the absence of being able to achieve any of that, I'll keep praying for him. And I'm not here to be the cheer squad, but I do want to say that the truth is this, that Scott Morrison is experiencing some of the same opposition that people like Tony Abbott have experienced in recent history. And for similar reasons, we do need to pray for him. And for similar reasons, can I implore us, be very, very skeptical about the narrative and try and verify facts as much as you can. I'm Mark Niles, and that was the truth of it. Hey guys, make sure you click like to like the video, or hit the subscribe button down here and click on the bell so you don't miss any notifications. And to watch more videos, just click here. Cheers. Go on, click one. You know you want to.